They thought putting me in a nursing home would silence me forever. I felt the chill of betrayal the day my own children handed me over, their faces hard with impatience, their words sharp and final. I saw the truth as clear as the flickering light in that sterile hallway. They never valued my sacrifices, not really. But I didn't cry or plead. Instead, I watched, I listened, and deep inside something shifted. My dignity was not theirs to discard. Hello, I'm Margaret Evans. Just a mother, a widow, and, until recently, the backbone of the Evans family. You might be watching from your living room, a hospital bed, or maybe a quiet kitchen halfway across the world. Wherever you are, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, subscribe and join me. This is my story, not just of betrayal, but of quiet power, long-held secrets, and a reckoning I never thought I'd have the strength for. Let's begin. Mom, we need to talk, David said, settling into my kitchen chair like he owned the place. His lawyer's voice carried that tone I'd grown to dread, the one that meant decisions had already been made without me. What about, sweetheart? I kept my hands busy with the dishes, though my heart was already racing. Sarah walked in behind him, wringing her hands. David, maybe we should— No, Sarah. We discussed this. He turned back to me. Mom, you're getting older. Last week you forgot to turn off the stove. Once. I forgot once. And you fell in the garden 2 months ago. I tripped over the hose. Anyone would have— Emily agrees with us, Sarah interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. We're worried about you living alone. I turned to face them, water still dripping from my hands. Where is Emily? If this concerns me, shouldn't she be here? She's busy with work, but she supports our decision, David said, pulling out a manila folder. We've found a wonderful place, Green Hills Nursing Home. It's only 20 minutes away. The word decision hit me like a slap. Your decision? Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be, Sarah said, tears starting to form. We love you, but we can't watch you 24/7. What if something happens? I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. And what about this house? What about my things? David's eyes lit up slightly. Well, we'll need to sell the house to help pay for your care. It's expensive, Mom. Even with your pension and Dad's life insurance, which I've barely touched in 15 years because I've been too busy helping all of you. Sarah flinched. Mom, that's not fair, isn't it? Sarah, who watched the twins when you had your breakdown, who co-signed your mortgage when the bank said no, and David, who paid for law school when your scholarships fell through. That's different, David said, his jaw tightening. That was family, helping family. And this isn't? They exchanged a look, the kind I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, the look that said, Mom doesn't understand. The thing is, David continued, opening his folder, we've already put down a deposit. You're expected on Tuesday. Tuesday? Today was Friday. My whole life, packed up and decided in 4 days. Don't I get a say in this? Emily's voice came from the doorway. Mom, you're being dramatic. She walked in like she'd been listening the whole time, her phone still in her hand. Green Hills is lovely. Air conditioning, activities, professional medical care. It's better than rattling around in this old house. This old house is my home. Was your home, Emily corrected. Now it's just expensive maintenance and property taxes you can't afford. I looked at my 3 children, the babies I'd nursed, through fevers, the teenagers I'd driven to every practice and recital, the young adults I'd supported through every crisis. David, 42, successful and cold, Sarah, 38, guilty but weak. Emily, 35, ambitious and impatient. When did you stop seeing me as your mother and start seeing me as a problem to solve? None of them answered. I raised you to be better than this, I whispered. David stood up. We are being better. We're being responsible. We're making sure you're safe and cared for. By people who don't know me, who don't love me. Mom. Sarah started crying openly now. It's not like that. We'll visit all the time. But I could see it in their eyes. The relief. The freedom they thought they were buying. They saw an old woman becoming a burden, not the mother who'd sacrificed everything to give them the lives they now lived. Fine, I said quietly. If that's what you've decided. They seemed surprised by my calm acceptance. Emily actually smiled. You'll love it there, Mom. Really. But as they busied themselves with paperwork and logistics, I made my own decision. I would watch. I would listen. And I would remember everything. Tuesday came too quickly. David loaded my suitcases into his Mercedes, while Sarah stood in the kitchen staring at the empty spaces where my life used to be. Mom, I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted... Wanted what, Sarah? Wanted to throw away the woman who raised you? Or wanted to do it without feeling guilty? She sobbed then, but she didn't change her mind. The car ride to Green Hills was silent except for David's occasional comments about traffic. In the back seat, I watched my neighborhood disappear. Mrs. Parker waving from her garden, the corner store where I'd bought birthday cakes for 30 years, the church where I'd prayed every Sunday since their father died. Green Hills looked exactly like what it was, a place where families put people they didn't want to deal with anymore. Clean, efficient, sterile. Mrs. Evans! A cheerful nurse greeted us at the entrance. Welcome to Green Hills. I'm Carla, and I'll be taking care of you. At least someone was using my name. David handled the admission paperwork, while Sarah cried in the lobby. Emily checked her phone. I sat in a wheelchair I didn't need, watching my children sign away their responsibility. For me, room 127 is all ready for you, Carla said, her smile genuine despite the circumstances. Your grandson Tommy called yesterday. He'll be visiting tomorrow. Tommy, 24 years old, Sarah's boy, the only one who'd seemed upset about this whole arrangement. Mom, we'll come to see you this weekend, David said, not meeting my eyes. Will you? Of course, Sarah said quickly. Every weekend. But I could already see the distance growing. In their minds, I was already yesterday's problem. As they left, I sat on my narrow bed in my small room, looking at the few possessions they'd allowed me to keep. Photos of grandchildren who would now see me as the grandmother in the nursing home. A jewelry box with pieces I'd never wear again. Books I'd read a dozen times. But I wasn't crying. I was thinking. I had been Margaret Evans. Wife, mother, nurse, provider, protector. I had been indispensable until I became inconvenient. They thought they could just set me aside. They were wrong. Morning, Mrs. Evans. How are we feeling today? Carla's voice pulled me from my thoughts as she entered with my medication tray. We are feeling betrayed, but I suppose that's not on your chart. She laughed, a real laugh. No, but maybe it should be. Mind if I sit for a minute? Please do. I could use the company of someone who actually wants to be here. Carla settled into the chair beside my bed. Your family seems to care about you. My family seems to care about their convenience. There's a difference. Tell me about them. So I did. I told her about David, brilliant and driven, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. About Sarah, sensitive and artistic, who'd painted me a picture every Mother's Day until she turned 16. About Emily, determined and fierce, who used to say she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. What changed? Carla asked. I got old. I got inconvenient. I got expensive. Or maybe they got scared. I looked at her sharply. Scared of what? Of losing you. Of watching you struggle. Of facing their own mortality. She shrugged. Sometimes people do the wrong thing for what they think are the right reasons. And sometimes people do the wrong thing because it's easier. That afternoon, Tommy came to visit. My grandson looked tired, stressed, older than his 24 years. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop them. I know you did, sweetheart. I patted the chair next to me. Tell me what's really happening at home. He sat down heavily. Dad, David, he's been going through your house, sorting through everything. He says you won't need most of it. And where is most of it going? Some to Goodwill. Some he's keeping. Mom, Sarah, she took your china cabinet. Of course she did. The china cabinet her father had built for me as a wedding gift. Emily took the jewelry, Tommy continued. Said it was family heirlooms, and she was the most responsible one to have them. I closed my eyes. My mother's pearl necklace, my wedding ring set, the little gold bracelet their father had given me when Tommy was born. What about the house? Listed yesterday. David says with the market being good, it should sell quickly. And my bank accounts? Tommy looked uncomfortable. David says he needs access to pay for your care here. He had some papers you signed. I remembered. Papers David had brought over months ago, during one of his legal checkups on my affairs. I'd trusted him. I'd signed whatever he'd put in front of me because he was my son, my lawyer son, who knew about these things. Grandma, are you okay? I opened my eyes and smiled at him. I'm perfect, Tommy. Thank you for telling me the truth. I wish I could do more. You're doing enough by visiting, by caring, by being the grandson your grandfather would be proud of. After Tommy left, I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. The betrayal was complete now. They hadn't just put me away. They were erasing me, selling my home, dividing my possessions, spending my money. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten that I used to be a nurse, that I'd handled financial planning for dozens of patients over the years, that I'd taught myself about investments and property and legal documents when their father died, because I couldn't afford to be ignorant about money when I was raising 3 children alone. And they'd forgotten that nurses notice everything. We watch, we listen, we remember. I pressed the call button. Yes, Mrs. Evans. Could you ask Carla to stop by when she has a moment? I need to make some phone calls. The next morning, Carla wheeled me to the activity room, where there was a phone residents could use for private calls. She positioned me at a small table and handed me the receiver. Take all the time you need, she said. I'll make sure you're not disturbed. My first call was to my bank. This is Margaret Evans. I need to check on some recent account activity. The representative was patient as I verified my identity and listened to the list of recent transactions. Large withdrawals, account transfers, a new co-signer added to my checking account. Ma'am, these transactions were all authorized by your power of attorney. I see. And when was that power of attorney dated? March 15th of this year. 6 months ago, when David had brought those papers for me to sign. My second call was to a lawyer, not Michael Turner yet. I wasn't ready for that conversation. This was to another firm, just to ask some general questions about power of attorney and elder law. Ma'am, if you believe your power of attorney is being misused, you need to document everything. Bank statements, property transfers, any major decisions made without your knowledge or consent. What if they've already sold my house? If the sale was made without your knowledge while you were competent, that could be grounds for a lawsuit. Do you have somewhere safe to keep documentation? I looked around the activity room, at the other residents playing cards or watching TV, most of them lost in their own worlds. I'll find somewhere. That evening, Tommy visited again. This time, I was ready for him. Tommy, I need you to do something for me. It might seem strange, but it's important. Anything, Grandma. I need you to bring me a box, something from my house before they sell everything. Do you remember the old shoebox I kept in my closet on the top shelf? The one with Dad's, with Grandpa's letters? That's the one. Can you get it for me without anyone knowing? He nodded slowly. David's been staying at the house this week, getting it ready for showings. But I have a key. I could go during the day when he's at work. And Tommy, when you bring it, don't mention it to anyone else. Not your mother, not your aunts. This is between us. Is everything okay, Grandma? I reached over and took his hand. Everything is going to be fine, sweetheart. But sometimes when people underestimate you, it's better to let them keep underestimating you. He squeezed my hand. I understand. But he didn't. Not really. He couldn't understand that his sweet, quiet grandmother was about to go to war. 3 days later, Tommy arrived with a small cardboard box, worn at the edges, taped carefully shut. I got it, he whispered, setting it on my lap. David never even noticed I was there. Inside were the letters his grandfather had written me during his brief time in the military, before we were married. Love letters I'd kept for 40 years. But underneath the letters were other papers I'd tucked away over the years. Property deeds, insurance policies, investment statements, and at the very bottom, a deed to a piece of land Thomas and I had bought in 1987, 35 miles north of town. 20 acres we'd planned to build a retirement home on someday. Land I'd forgotten about in my grief after he died. Land that had sat undeveloped for decades. Land that, according to the property tax statement, was now worth considerably more than the $20,000 we'd paid for it. I looked up at Tommy, who was watching me carefully. Grandma? What is it? Insurance, sweetheart. Sometimes the best insurance is something nobody knows you have. Mrs. Evans, you seem different today, Carla said, adjusting my pillows during the morning routine. More alert. I feel more like myself. And how does yourself feel? I smiled at her, like someone who's been underestimated for too long. Carla raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, she sat down in her usual chair. Can I tell you something? Of course. I've been working in elder care for 12 years. I've seen a lot of families make a lot of decisions. Some good, some less good. And which category do my children fall into? Honestly, I think they're scared. Scared of losing you, scared of making the wrong choice, scared of the responsibility. But that doesn't make what they did right. I studied her face. You've seen this before. More than I'd like to admit. Adult children who convince themselves they're protecting their parents by making all the decisions for them. They tell themselves it's love, but sometimes... She shrugged. Sometimes it's just easier than having difficult conversations. Carla, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Why do you do this job? She was quiet for a moment. My grandmother raised me. When my parents died in a car accident, she took me in, no questions asked. Worked 2 jobs to put me through nursing school. When she got sick, when she needed care, my aunt stuck her in a place like this and forgot about her. What happened? She died alone, angry and forgotten. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can make sure other people's grandmothers don't die, feeling forgotten. I reached out and squeezed her hand. She would be proud of you. I hope so. She squeezed back. Now, what's in that box you've been guarding like a secret? I laughed. What makes you think it's a secret? Because you only look at it when no one else is around, and you smiled differently after your grandson brought it. Nurses really do notice everything. It's my past, I said simply. Documents, papers, memories. Things my children don't know about. Things that might change their perspective. Things that might change everything. That afternoon, I made another phone call, this time to the county assessor's office. I'm calling about a property I own. 20 acres on rural Route 47. The parcel number is... I read from the deed Tommy had brought me. Yes, ma'am. That's a beautiful piece of property, especially now with the new shopping development going in right across the road. My heart skipped. Shopping development? Oh, yes. Mercy General. Hospital is building a new medical complex there, and there's going to be a whole commercial district. Your land's right in the sweet spot. I'd guess it's worth, 8, maybe 10 million now. Have you considered selling? $10 million. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. $10 million on a piece of land my children didn't know existed, land that was still solely in my name because Thomas had died before we could add him to the deed. Mrs. Evans, are you all right? Carla had appeared beside me. I'm perfect, I whispered. Absolutely perfect. That evening, Tommy visited with updates from home. The house sold, he said, quietly. David seemed pretty happy about the price. I bet he did. And my things? Most of it's gone. Emily took the family photos to preserve family history. Sarah took the furniture she wanted. David took your desk and filing cabinet. Did they find anything interesting in the filing cabinet? David went through everything. Said it was mostly old bills and insurance papers. Nothing important. Nothing important, because he didn't know what to look for. Tommy, I need you to do something else for me. What is it, Grandma? I need you to help me contact someone. A lawyer I used to know. His name is Michael Turner. Tommy pulled out his phone. I can look him up for you. He might be retired now. We knew each other. Oh, it must be 15 years ago. His wife was one of my patients. What kind of patient? I smiled, remembering. The kind who lived because I caught something the doctors missed. The kind whose husband never forgot what that meant. 2 days later, Michael Turner walked into the Green Hills activity room. He was older, grayer, but his eyes were still sharp. Margaret Evans, he said, settling into the chair across from me. When I got the message that you wanted to see me, I have to admit I was curious. Hello, Michael. Thank you for coming. How could I not, after what you did for Helen? He shook his head. She lived another 12 years because of... You. Saw our grandchildren born. Saw our son get married. Those were 12 years we wouldn't have had. I was just doing my job. You saved her life. When the doctors said the chest pain was just anxiety, you insisted on an EKG. That heart attack would have killed her if you hadn't pushed. I had forgotten the details, but I remembered Helen Turner, sweet woman, worried about her family, dismissed by doctors who thought she was being dramatic. I need help, Michael. What kind of help? So I told him. About the nursing home, about my children, about the house and the bank accounts, and the power of attorney I'd signed without understanding what it really meant. And you believe your children are misusing their legal authority? I know they are. The question is, what can I do about it? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Margaret, this kind of case, it's difficult. Family law, elder abuse, financial exploitation. It gets messy. Are you saying you won't help me? I'm saying I want to help you. But I need to understand what you want to accomplish. Is this about the money? The house? Getting them to bring you home? I thought about that. What did I want? I want them to see me, I said finally. Not as a problem to be solved or a burden to be managed. I want them to see me as their mother, as a person who deserves respect and dignity and choice. And if they don't, then I want them to learn that underestimating people can be expensive. Michael smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from him. Now that, Margaret, sounds like something I can help you with. You kept meticulous records, Michael said, spreading papers across the table in the Green Hills conference room. We'd been meeting for 3 days, going through everything in my box, plus documents he'd requested from banks and the courthouse. Your husband was lucky to have someone so organized. Thomas always said I could have been an accountant if I'd wanted to. He wasn't wrong. Michael tapped a property deed. This land purchase was brilliant. Buying before the area developed, holding on to it. Even if you'd forgotten about it, it was a smart investment. Thomas had an eye for potential. And you had the sense to keep the deed in your name only. I laughed. Pure accident. Thomas died 2 weeks before we were supposed to go to the lawyer's office to add him to the title. I just never got around to changing it. Sometimes accidents work in our favor. Michael pulled out a calculator. Based on current property values and the development across the road, I'd estimate this land is worth between $8 and $12 million. The number still took my breath away. And my children don't know about it. Nothing in your power of attorney documents mentions this property. Nothing in the bank records your son has access to references it. As far as I can tell, you're the only one who knows it exists. So what do we do with that information? Michael leaned back in his chair. That depends on what you want to do. We could sell it quietly, set up a trust, use the money to secure your independence. Or we could use it as leverage, proof that you're not the incompetent old woman your children seem to think you are. Evidence that you're perfectly capable of managing your own affairs. I considered this. What would that look like? We file a lawsuit, challenge the power of attorney, claim elder abuse and financial exploitation. We demand an accounting of every penny they have spent, every decision they've made. We make them justify putting you here against your will. And if we win, you get your money back. You get control of your life back. You get to decide where you live and how you live. And if we lose, you're in the same position you're in now, except they'll know you fought back. I stared at the papers scattered across the table. My whole life reduced to documents and dollar amounts, but also my whole life proving I was more than they'd given me credit for. Michael, what are the chances we'll win? Honestly, good, very good. What they've done. Selling your house without your explicit consent draining your accounts, making major life decisions for you while you're completely competent. It's textbook elder abuse. Even though I signed the power of attorney doesn't give them the right to act against your wishes or in their own interests. It's supposed to be used when you can't make decisions for yourself, not when they disagree with your decisions. I thought about David's face when he'd explained the nursing home decision. The way he'd talked over me, dismissed my concerns, acted like my opinions didn't matter. They thought I'd just accept it, I said quietly. They thought I'd be grateful. A lot of adult children make that mistake. What mistake? Thinking their parents will disappear quietly when they become inconvenient. That evening, Tommy visited with more news from home. David's been getting calls, he said, settling into his usual chair. From the nursing home business office, something about payment arrangements. What kind of payment arrangements? I'm not sure, but he seemed stressed about it. He was on the phone for like an hour, asking about payment plans and monthly costs. Interesting. What about Sarah and Emily? Sarah's been crying a lot. I think she feels guilty about the whole thing. Emily got a promotion at work. She's been posting about it on social media. Of course she had. Tommy, can I ask you something? Sure, Grandma. When you were growing up, what did your mother tell you about me? He shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? Did she talk about me as your grandmother? Or as her mother? Did she tell you stories about her childhood, about the things I did for the family? Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, not really. When she talked about you, it was usually about current stuff. Like how you were getting older and needed help with things. Did she ever tell you about the time I worked 3 jobs to keep the house after your grandfather died? Or about the money I gave her and David for college? Or about how I watched you and your sister every summer so she could work? No, he said softly. She never told me any of that. I thought not. Grandma, why are you asking? I looked at my grandson, this young man who was the only one in my family who seemed to actually see me as a person, not a problem. Because I'm tired of being invisible, Tommy. I'm tired of being treated like a burden instead of the woman who made their lives possible. What are you going to do? I'm going to remind them who they're dealing with. 2 days later, Michael returned with news. I've filed the preliminary paperwork, he said, sitting down across from me. Challenged the power of attorney, requested a full accounting of your finances, and petitioned for a competency hearing. A competency hearing? To prove you're perfectly capable of making your own decisions. It's usually the other way around. Families trying to prove someone is incompetent. But in your case, we need to prove you're competent and that you were when they made these decisions for you. When will they find out? They'll be served with papers tomorrow. I felt a strange flutter in my stomach. Excitement? Fear? After months of feeling powerless, I was about to take my power back. Michael, what happens next? They'll probably call you, try to convince you to drop it, maybe offer compromises. David, especially, is going to be angry. Good, I said. It's time he learned that actions have consequences. Are you ready for this, Margaret? It's going to get ugly. I thought about the last 6 months, about being dismissed and discarded, about having my life packed up and sold off like I was already dead, about sitting in this sterile room while my children divided up 40 years of my marriage like they were splitting a pizza. I've been ready for this longer than I realized. The phone call came at 7:30 the next morning. I was having breakfast in the dining room when Carla appeared at my table. "Mrs. Evans, your son David is on the phone. He sounds upset." I took my time finishing my coffee. "Tell him I'll be right there." When I picked up the phone in the activity room, David's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Mom, what the hell is this? Some lawyer is claiming we abused you?" "Good morning, David. How are you today?" "Don't play games with me. Did you hire a lawyer to sue us?" "I hired a lawyer to protect my interests. There's a difference." "Your interests? We put you in the best nursing home in the county. We're paying for your care. We're handling your finances responsibly." "Whose definition of responsibly?" "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't live alone anymore. The house needed to be sold. Your accounts needed to be managed. We're doing what's best for you." "And who decided what was best for me?" Silence. "Did anyone ask me what I wanted, David? Did anyone consider that I might have opinions about my own life?" "You're not thinking clearly. The stress of aging, of living alone." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. Clear enough to know that selling my house without my permission is fraud. Clear enough to know that draining my accounts for your convenience is theft." "It's not theft when it's for your benefit." "Is it for my benefit, David? Or is it for yours?" Another silence, longer this time. "Mom, drop this lawsuit. We can talk about this. Work something out." "We can talk after you explain to a judge why you thought I was incompetent to make my own decisions." "This is insane. Sarah's going to be devastated. Emily will survive. She's tougher than you think. Takes after her mother." I hung up before he could respond. An hour later, Sarah called, crying. "Mom, please, you're tearing the family apart." "I'm not tearing anything apart, Sarah. I'm just refusing to disappear quietly. We love you. We were trying to help. Then help me understand why you thought the best way to help was to make decisions for me instead of with me. You weren't being realistic about your limitations." "What limitations?" "I forgot to turn off the stove once. I tripped over a garden hose. Since when do those qualify as incompetence?" David said a lot of things." "Did you ever ask me what I thought?" Sarah was crying harder now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen." "What didn't you want to happen, Sarah? Putting me in a nursing home or getting caught doing it without my consent?" She hung up. Emily called that afternoon, her voice ice cold. "Mother, this tantrum needs to stop." "Tantrum?" "This lawsuit, this drama. You're embarrassing the family." "I'm embarrassing the family, not the children who put their competent mother in a nursing home against her will. You're not competent. You're elderly. You're isolated. You're not making good decisions." "Such as?" "Such as hiring some lawyer to attack your own children for trying to take care of you. I hired a lawyer to protect myself from children who think taking care of me means taking control of me. We have power of attorney. We have the legal right to make these decisions. You have the legal obligation to make decisions in my best interest, not yours. Everything we did was in your best interest." "Really? Selling my house was in my best interest? Taking my money was in my best interest? Putting me away like a piece of furniture was in my best interest?" "Yes." The word hung in the air between us. "Then you won't mind explaining that to a judge." That evening, Tommy visited. He looked exhausted. "The whole family's in chaos," he said, slumping into his chair. Dad's been on the phone with lawyers all day. Mom's been crying. Emily's furious. And how are you? Honestly, kind of proud of you. I smiled. Kind of. Okay, really proud. I never thought. I mean, I knew what they did was wrong, but I didn't think there was anything you could do about it. There's always something you can do, Tommy. Sometimes you just have to be willing to do it. Are you sure about this, though? I want to support you, but they're my parents. This is going to get really messy. I reached over and took his hand. Tommy, let me ask you something. If someone treated you the way your parents treated me, what would you do? He thought about it. I'd fight back. Then you understand why I'm doing this. But what if you win? What happens to the family? What family, sweetheart? The family where I'm invisible, where my opinions don't matter, where I'm seen as a burden instead of a person. That's not, isn't it? When was the last time anyone asked me what I wanted? When was the last time anyone valued my opinion about my own life? Tommy was quiet. I raised 3 children, I continued. I worked. I sacrificed. I gave them everything I could. I earned the right to be treated with respect. If they can't give me that respect, then maybe it's time they learned what life is like without me. Grandma. I know it's hard, Tommy, but sometimes the only way to fix something broken is to acknowledge that it's broken. The next day, Michael called with an update. David hired a lawyer, Richard Steinberg from the Steinberg & Associates firm. Good lawyer? Expensive lawyer. He's going to argue that your children acted reasonably, that the power of attorney was properly executed, that your care requires professional supervision. And what do we argue? That you're completely competent, that they acted in their own interests rather than yours, and that they violated your rights. Do we have a case? Margaret, we have documentation of them selling your house without your explicit consent, draining your bank accounts, and making major life decisions while you were fully competent. Plus, we have that land they don't know about. Proof that you're far from helpless when it comes to managing assets. When do we tell them about the land? Michael smiled. Right before trial. Let them build their case around the idea that you're a poor, helpless widow with no resources. Then we show the judge that you're actually worth more than all of them combined. That should be interesting. Oh, it will be. But Margaret, are you prepared for how they're going to react? Finding out you had millions of dollars they didn't know about is going to change how they see this whole situation. I thought about that. You mean they'll be angry that I had money and didn't tell them? I mean, they'll realize they underestimated you completely, and people don't like feeling foolish. Good. It's time they learned that lesson. 3 days later, the preliminary hearing was scheduled. Michael picked me up from Green Hills in his car. The first time I'd left the facility since arriving. How does it feel to be out? He asked as we drove toward the courthouse. Like I'm remembering who I used to be. The courthouse was busy, full of people handling their legal business. As we walked through the halls, I caught sight of David, Sarah, and Emily, standing with their lawyer near the courtroom. David looked furious. Sarah looked scared. Emily looked like she was calculating something. Mrs. Evans. Their lawyer approached us. I'm Richard Steinberg. I represent your children. I wonder if we could discuss a settlement before we go in. Front of the judge. What kind of settlement? Michael asked. Your client returns home. We establish a care plan that ensures her safety, and we all move forward as a family. I looked at him steadily. And my house? My money? The house sale can't be undone, but we could discuss alternative living arrangements. As for the financial arrangements, those were made in your best interest." "Mr. Steinberg," I interrupted, "I didn't hire a lawyer to negotiate my surrender. I hired him to prove that I'm competent to make my own decisions. Mrs. Evans, your children love you. They're worried about you. This lawsuit is tearing your family apart. My family was torn apart the day they decided I didn't deserve a voice in my own life." We walked into the courtroom. Judge Patricia Morales looked stern but fair as she reviewed the papers in front of her. "This is an unusual case," she said, looking up at both legal teams. "We have adult children claiming they acted responsibly under power of attorney, and we have a mother claiming her rights were violated. Mr. Turner, please present your client's position." Michael stood up. "Your Honor, my client Margaret Evans is a 70-year-old retired nurse who was placed in a nursing home against her will by children who sold her house, drained her bank accounts, and made major life decisions without her consent or input. She was fully competent when these decisions were made, and she remains fully competent today." "Mr. Steinberg?" David's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, the Evans children acted responsibly and legally under a properly executed power of attorney. Their mother was living alone, had several minor accidents, and needed professional care. They arranged the best possible care for her and managed her finances to ensure that care could continue." "Mrs. Evans," the judge said, turning to me, "I'd like to hear from you directly. In your own words, tell me what happened." I stood up, my legs steadier than they'd been in months. "Your Honor, I am not incompetent. I am not helpless. I am not a burden. I am a woman who raised 3 children, worked as a nurse for 30 years, and managed my own affairs successfully for 15 years after my husband died. I had one minor accident, tripping over a garden hose, and forgot to turn off the stove once. For this, my children decided I was incapable of living independently." "Did they discuss their concerns with you?" "They informed me of their decision. There was no discussion." "And the power of attorney? Did you understand what you were signing?" "I thought I was signing papers to help my son manage some legal matters if I became unable to do so myself. I did not think I was signing away my right to make decisions about my own life while I was still perfectly capable of making them." Judge Morales made some notes. "Mr. Steinberg, can you produce any medical evidence that Mrs. Evans was incompetent at the time these decisions were made?" "Your Honor, competency isn't just about medical diagnoses. It's about practical ability to manage daily life safely. Mrs. Evans was isolated, had minor accidents that could have been serious, and wasn't making realistic assessments of her limitations. Mrs. Evans, how do you respond to that?" "I respond by saying that isolation was their choice, not mine. I had friends, activities, a life in my community. I had minor accidents because I'm human, not because I'm incompetent. And as for limitations, the only limitation I had was 3 children who decided I was too much trouble to deal with as an equal." The judge looked at David. "Mr. Evans, you're an attorney. You understand that power of attorney is meant to be used in the principal's best interest, not for the convenience of the agent." David stood up. "Your Honor, everything we did was in our mother's best interest. The nursing home provides professional care, medical supervision, social activities. Her house was old and expensive to maintain. Her finances needed professional management." "Did you consult with your mother before making these decisions?" "We discussed our concerns with her." Did you ask for her consent before selling her house? David hesitated. We believed we had the authority to make that decision. That's not what I asked. Did you ask for her consent? No, Your Honor. Did you ask for her input on which nursing home to choose? We researched the best facilities available. Did you ask your mother what she preferred? Another hesitation. We presented her with our decision. Judge Morales turned to Sarah. Ms. Evans, did you have concerns about your mother's competency? Sarah stood up, clearly nervous. Your Honor, we were worried about her safety. She seemed fragile. Did you observe any signs of dementia or cognitive decline? No, but she was stubborn about accepting help. Stubborn or simply disagreeing with your assessment of what help she needed. Sarah didn't answer. The judge looked at Emily. Ms. Evans, you're the youngest. What was your perspective on your mother's situation? Emily stood, confident and composed. Your Honor, my mother is elderly and was living in an unsuitable situation. We made responsible decisions to ensure her well-being. Did you consider alternatives to the nursing home? We considered what was practical and affordable. Did you ask your mother what she considered practical and affordable? She wasn't being realistic about her situation. According to whom? Emily faltered slightly. According to us. According to our assessment. Judge Morales set down her pen. I'm going to order a competency evaluation for Mrs. Evans to be conducted by an independent medical professional. I'm also ordering a full accounting of all financial transactions made under the power of attorney. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks with those reports. As we left the courthouse, I could hear David arguing with his lawyer in the hallway. This is ridiculous. She's our mother, not some stranger we're trying to defraud. The judge is being thorough, Steinberg replied. The competency evaluation will support your position. It better. That evening, Tommy visited me with news. The whole town's talking about it, he said. Someone from the courthouse called the newspaper. There's going to be an article about the lawsuit. How do you feel about that? Nervous, but also... I keep thinking about something you said, about earning the right to be treated with respect. And I think you're right. I think they forgot who you are. Who am I, Tommy? He smiled. You're the woman who worked 3 jobs to keep her house, who put 3 kids through college, who never missed a single one of my baseball games, even when you were working double shifts. You're the woman who taught me that respect isn't something you get for free. It's something you earn, and something you defend. I felt tears in my eyes. You remember. I remember everything, Grandma, and I think it's time everyone else remembered too. The competency evaluation took place 3 days later. Dr. Sarah Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist, spent 2 hours with me, asking questions, giving me tests, evaluating my cognitive function. Mrs. Evans, she said at the end, I need to ask you directly. Do you believe your children acted in your best interest? Dr. Chen, my children acted in their own interest and convinced themselves it was in mine. There's a difference. Can you elaborate on that? They wanted me taken care of so they wouldn't have to worry about me. They wanted my finances managed so they wouldn't have to deal with my decisions. They wanted me in a controlled environment so they could control their own lives more easily. And what would you have preferred? I would have preferred to be treated like an adult, to be consulted about decisions affecting my life, to be given options instead of ultimatums. Do you feel you're capable of living independently? I feel I'm capable of making informed decisions about how I want to live, with whatever support I choose to accept. Dr. Chen made notes. What kind of support would you find acceptable? Support that enhances my independence, not support that replaces it. Help when I ask for it, not control imposed without my consent. The next week, Michael called with the results. Dr. Chen found you completely competent, he said. Her report states that you show no signs of cognitive decline, that your judgment is sound, and that you're fully capable of making informed decisions about your care and living situation, and the financial accounting. That's where it gets interesting. Your children spent nearly $200,000 of your money. House sale proceeds, savings, investments, in 6 months. On what? Nursing home payments, yes, but also paying off David's credit cards, Sarah's mortgage, and Emily's student loans. I felt the anger rise in my chest. They used my money to pay their debts. It gets worse. David charged the estate for his legal fees in setting up your care arrangement. Emily charged for estate management services. Sarah charged for caregiving, consultation. They charged me for putting me away. They charged you for the privilege of being betrayed by your own children. I was quiet for a long moment. Michael, how much is left? About $50,000, plus your monthly pension and Social Security. $50,000 from a lifetime of work and saving and sacrifice. They thought they got everything, I said quietly. They thought wrong. Margaret, it's time to tell them about the land. The second hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I dressed carefully, not in the comfortable clothes I'd been wearing at Green Hills, but in the navy blue suit I'd worn to church for 20 years. Carla helped me with my hair. You look like you're going to war, she said, stepping back to admire her work. I am going to war, and I intend to win. Michael picked me up early. In the car, he briefed me on what to expect. They're going to argue that the money was spent appropriately, that nursing home care is expensive, that they acted reasonably. And then we produce the property deed. We show the judge that you're not a helpless widow living on Social Security. You're a woman of considerable means who was systematically defrauded by her own children. How do you think they'll react? Honestly, I think David's going to be furious that you outsmarted him. Sarah's going to be devastated by the betrayal. Emily's going to try to figure out how to turn it to her advantage. And the judge? The judge is going to see 3 adult children who thought they could steal from their mother because she was old and wouldn't fight back. We arrived at the courthouse to find a small crowd gathered outside. The newspaper article had generated more interest than expected. Mrs. Evans, a reporter approached. Can you comment on your lawsuit against your children? I can comment that children who betray their parents shouldn't be surprised when their parents fight back. Inside the courtroom, my children sat with their lawyer, whispering urgently. David looked haggard. Sarah had been crying. Emily looked like she was planning something. Judge Morales called the session to order. I've reviewed Dr. Chen's competency, evaluation, and the financial accounting. Mr. Steinberg, your clients have some explaining to do. Steinberg stood. Your Honor, my clients acted in good faith to ensure their mother's care. Nursing home costs are substantial, and they used available funds to secure the best possible care for her. By available funds, you mean they used nearly $200,000 of Mrs. Evans' money in 6 months? The money was used for her benefit, including the payments to themselves for managing her affairs. Reasonable compensation for services provided. Judge Morales looked skeptical. Services like putting her in a nursing home against her will? Services like ensuring she received appropriate care? The judge turned to Michael. Mr. Turner, what's your client's position on these expenditures? Michael stood and smiled. Your Honor, my client's position is that her children systematically looted her accounts while convincing themselves they were helping her. But more importantly, my client would like to address the court's assumption about her financial situation. What assumption? The assumption that she needed their financial management at all. Michael walked to our table and picked up a manila folder. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence that Mrs. Evans is far from the helpless widow her children believed her to be. He handed papers to the judge and to Steinberg. I watched David's face as his lawyer showed him the documents. His expression went from confusion to shock to something that looked like rage. Your Honor, Michael continued, Mrs. Evans owns 20 acres of prime commercial real estate, currently valued at approximately $10 million. This property has been in her sole name for 35 years. Her children knew nothing about it. The courtroom was silent. Furthermore, Michael continued, this property demonstrates that Mrs. Evans has been quietly managing substantial assets for decades. She is not incompetent. She is not helpless. She is not poor. She is a woman who chose not to reveal all her assets to children who, as it turns out, would likely have found a way to spend those as well. Judge Morales stared at the papers. Mrs. Evans, is this accurate? You own property worth $10 million? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor. And your children didn't know about it? No, Your Honor. I saw no reason to tell them. David shot to his feet. She's been lying to us. She let us think she needed our help while she had millions of dollars hidden away. Mr. Evans, the judge said sharply, sit down. You're not addressing the court. But David was beyond listening. Do you know what we've been through? The stress, the worry, the financial burden of caring for her. And she's been sitting on a fortune the whole time. The financial burden? I turned to face him. David, you used my money to pay your credit cards. What financial burden? We thought you were broke. We thought you needed us to manage your finances because you couldn't afford proper care. You never asked me about my finances. You assumed, and then you acted on those assumptions. Sarah was crying openly now. Mom, why didn't you tell us? We were so worried about money, about how to pay for everything. Sarah, you were worried about your money, not mine. And given what you did with the money you knew about, why would I tell you about money you didn't know about? Emily finally spoke, her voice ice cold. So this whole lawsuit is just you playing games with us? Pretending to be helpless while you're actually rich? Emily, this lawsuit is about you treating me like I was already dead. The money doesn't change that. Judge Morales rapped her gavel. Order! Mr. Evans, Ms. Evans, you will address the court through your attorney, not directly to your mother. But the damage was done. The secret was out, and everything had changed. Steinberg requested a recess to consult with his clients. As they huddled in the hallway, I could hear David's voice rising. She made fools of us. She let us agonize over every expense while she's sitting on millions. David, Sarah's voice was pleading. Maybe she didn't trust us. Maybe she had reasons. What reasons? We're her children. Maybe that's the problem, Emily said, quietly. Maybe being her children doesn't automatically make us trustworthy. When court resumed, Steinberg looked defeated. Your Honor, my clients would like to request a settlement conference. This new information changes the complexion of the case significantly. I'll bet it does, Judge Morales said dryly. "Mrs. Evans, are you interested in settlement discussions?" I looked at my 3 children. David, angry and embarrassed. Sarah, guilty and ashamed. Emily, calculating and cold. "Your Honor, I'm interested in justice. If my children want to discuss settlement, they can start by acknowledging what they did and why it was wrong." David stood up again. "What we did? What about what you did? Lying to us, manipulating us, making us think you were helpless." "David," I said calmly, "I never told you I was helpless. You decided I was helpless. I never told you I was broke. You assumed I was broke. I never asked you to take control of my life. You chose to take control of my life. But if you'd known I had money, you would have found a way to spend it, just like you spent everything else. The only difference is you would have spent more." Judge Morales looked at both sides. "Settlement conference is scheduled for next week. In the meantime, I'm ordering the immediate return of all remaining funds to Mrs. Evans' control, and I'm revoking the power of attorney pending resolution of this case." As we left the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. "Mrs. Evans, how does it feel to outsmart your own children?" "It feels like being a mother who taught her children better than they learned." "What do you want people to know about elder abuse?" "I want them to know that age doesn't equal incompetence, and love doesn't justify control." That evening, alone in my room at Green Hills, I sat looking at the papers Michael had given me. Bank statements showing my accounts restored, property deeds proving my worth, legal documents confirming my competence. But what I felt wasn't triumph. It was sadness. Sadness that it had come to this. Sadness that my children had learned to see me as a burden instead of a person. Sadness that love had become control and care had become convenience. Tommy visited that night, his face serious. "Grandma, the whole family's falling apart." "I know. Dad's furious. Mom's devastated. Emily's barely speaking to anyone." "And how are you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you. But I'm also scared. What happens now? What happens to us?" I reached for his hand. "What happens now is that everyone learns that respect isn't optional, even in families, especially in families. But do we still get to be a family?" "Tommy, we'll always be family. But we might have to learn how to be a better family. A family where everyone's voice matters, where love doesn't mean control, where caring for someone doesn't mean taking away their choices. Is that possible?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know it's necessary." The settlement conference was held in a small room at the courthouse. Judge Morales presided with Michael and me on one side of the table, and Steinberg with my 3 children on the other. The atmosphere was tense, electric with unresolved anger and hurt. "Before we discuss terms," Judge Morales began, "I want to hear from each party about what they hope to accomplish here. Mr. Evans, you're the eldest. Start with you." David cleared his throat, his lawyer's composure barely containing his rage. "Your Honor, we want our mother to acknowledge that we acted in good faith. We want recognition that caring for an elderly parent is complicated and stressful. And frankly, we want an apology for the deception about her financial situation. Mrs. Evans, your response?" I looked at David steadily. "Good faith doesn't excuse bad actions. You sold my house without my permission. You spent my money on your debts. You put me in a nursing home against my will. The fact that you convinced yourselves it was for my own good doesn't make it right. We were trying to protect you. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. Judge Morales turned to Sarah. "Miss Evans?" Sarah had been crying before we even sat down. "I just want my mom back," she whispered. "I want us to be a family again. I know we made mistakes, but we love her. We were scared and we made bad decisions, but it came from love." "Sarah," I said gently, "love doesn't justify betrayal. Love doesn't mean you get to make my decisions for me. But we were so worried about you." "You were worried about yourselves, worried about the inconvenience of having an aging mother, worried about the responsibility of actually caring for me instead of just managing me." Emily spoke next, her voice controlled but bitter. "What I want is honesty from everyone. Mom, you manipulated this entire situation. You let us believe you were helpless while you had millions hidden away. You played the victim while secretly planning to destroy us." "Emily, I didn't plan any of this. I simply chose not to tell you about assets I didn't think you needed to know about. Given what you did with the money you did know about, can you honestly say I was wrong? You were wrong to lie to us." "I never lied. You never asked about my complete financial situation. You assumed, and you acted on those assumptions. Because you let us assume. Because you never treated me like someone whose opinions mattered. Enough to ask." Judge Morales held up her hand. "Mrs. Evans, the senior Mrs. Evans, what do you want from this settlement?" I had been thinking about this question for weeks. What did I want? I want acknowledgement that what they did was wrong. I want them to understand that age doesn't make me incompetent, and need doesn't make me powerless. I want my remaining money returned, with interest, and I want them to understand that loving someone means respecting their autonomy, not taking it away. "And what about the money they spent?" "The money they spent on nursing home care, I'll accept as a legitimate expense. The money they spent on themselves, I want repaid." David's face flushed. "Repaid? Do you know what we sacrificed to take care of you?" "What did you sacrifice, David? You used my money to pay your bills. You charged me for the privilege of putting me away. What exactly did you sacrifice?" "Our peace of mind, our time, our worry." "Your worry? You were worried about me, so you made me disappear? You were concerned about my well-being, so you eliminated my voice in my own life? We were trying to do the right thing. I stood up then, my voice rising for the first time in months. The right thing would have been to talk to me. The right thing would have been to ask me what I wanted. The right thing would have been to treat me like a human being instead of a problem to solve." The room was silent. "Do you want to know what the right thing would have been?" I continued, my voice quieter but no less intense. "The right thing would have been to say, 'Mom, we're worried about you living alone. Can we talk about some options?' The right thing would have been to say, 'Mom, we think you might need some help. What kind of help would you be comfortable with?' The right thing would have been to include me in decisions about my own life." I sat back down, my hands shaking slightly. "Instead, you decided I was incompetent. You decided what was best for me. You decided to take control of my life because it was easier than respecting my autonomy. And when I fought back, you acted like I was betraying you." Sarah was sobbing now. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. We should have talked to you. We should have asked what you wanted." "Should have, Sarah, but you didn't." David was staring at the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller, less certain. "Mom, we thought..." I thought you weren't being realistic about your limitations. The stove, the fall in the garden. I thought you were in denial. David, I had 2 minor incidents in 6 months. In the same 6 months, how many times did you or Sarah or Emily make mistakes? Forget things? Have accidents? Did anyone declare you incompetent? He was quiet. The difference is that when you make mistakes, people see them as human error. When I make mistakes, you see them as evidence of decline. You couldn't imagine that I might still be the same competent woman who raised you. You could only see an old lady who needed to be managed. Emily finally spoke, her voice barely audible. So what happens now? Judge Morales looked at me. That's up to your mother. I looked at my 3 children. These adults I had raised. These people I had loved and sacrificed for and supported through every crisis of their lives. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by the truth of what they had done. What happens now is that you learn, I said quietly. You learn that respect isn't automatic, even from your children. You learn that love without respect is just pretty words. You learn that I am still the woman who raised you, and I am still capable of making my own decisions about my own life. And us? Sarah whispered. What about us? I was quiet for a long moment. That depends on you, on whether you can learn to see me as a person again, instead of a burden, on whether you can learn to love me without trying to control me. We never stopped loving you, David said. But you stopped respecting me, and without respect, love is just a feeling, not an action. Judge Morales cleared her throat. Let's discuss specific terms. Mrs. Evans, you want the personal debt repayments? Yes, $60,000, the amount they spent on their own bills. With interest? With interest. And the management fees they charged? Returned. In full. That's another $15,000, Michael added. Steinberg looked at his clients. David was pale. Your Honor, my clients don't have that kind of money readily available. Then they'll have to find it, I said. The same way I would have had to find it if they had succeeded in spending everything I owned. And the power of attorney? Revoked permanently. I'll make my own decisions about my care and my finances. And your living situation? I looked around the room, at my children, at the lawyers, at the judge who was trying to help us find a way forward. I'll decide. That myself. 3 weeks after the settlement, I was packing my few belongings at Green Hills. The small room that had been my prison was about to become just a memory. You're really leaving us, Carla said, helping me fold my clothes. I'm going to miss you. You saved my life here, Carla. You reminded me that I was still a person, not just an old lady someone had discarded. You saved yourself. I just witnessed it. I have something for you. I handed her an envelope. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. She opened it and stared at the check. Mrs. Evans, this is $5,000. It's a thank you. And it's a scholarship fund I'm starting for nursing assistants who want to advance their education. You were the first recipient I thought of. She started crying. I can't accept this. You can and you will. You showed me kindness when I needed it most. Let me show you kindness in return. Tommy arrived to drive me to my new apartment. Small but comfortable place just 10 minutes from his house. As we loaded my things into his car, he seemed nervous. Grandma, are you sure about this? Living alone again? Tommy, I was never afraid of living alone. I was afraid of living without choice. And the family? Mom's been calling me every day, asking if I think you'll forgive them. What do you tell her? I tell her that forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and that earning back someone's trust takes time. Smart boy. And what do you think? I think they learned something important about you and about themselves. Such as that you're tougher than they thought, and that they're not as good at making decisions for other people as they thought they were. 2 days later, Sarah came to visit my new apartment. She brought flowers and tears. Mom, I can't stop thinking about what we did to you. Good. You shouldn't stop thinking about it. I keep wondering how we got it so wrong. I poured us both tea and sat down across from her. Sarah, you got it wrong because you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem. When did that happen? I don't know. Maybe when Dad died? You seemed so fragile after that. I was grieving, not incompetent. But you were alone, and we worried. You worried about your own guilt. You felt guilty that your lives were busy and full while I was alone and grieving. Instead of sitting with that guilt, instead of finding ways to include me in your lives, you decided the problem was that I was alone, not that you weren't making time for me. Sarah cried harder. You're right. We were selfish. You were human. But being human doesn't excuse what you did. How do I fix this, Mom? How do I earn your trust back? I looked at my middle child, the sensitive one, the one who had always felt things too deeply. You start by seeing me as I am, not as you think I should be. You start by asking me what I want instead of deciding what I need. You start by including me in your life instead of managing me out of it. Can I come visit you? Regularly. Not to check on you, but just to spend time. I'd like that, Sarah. I'd like that very much. The next week, David came by. He looked older, tired, less certain of himself. Mom, I owe you an apology. Yes, you do. I was wrong. About everything. I was wrong to assume you couldn't handle your own affairs. I was wrong to sell your house without asking you. I was wrong to spend your money on my debts. Yes, you were. He seemed to expect more from me. Absolution, perhaps, or her reassurance that it was all okay now. I've already started paying you back, he said when I didn't respond. It'll take time, but you'll get every penny. Good. Mom, I need you to know that I thought I was helping you. I thought I was being responsible. David, the most responsible thing you could have done was treat me like an adult, capable of making my own decisions. But you weren't being realistic about your limitations. Whose limitations? Mine or yours? He looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, maybe the limitation wasn't my ability to live independently. Maybe the limitation was your ability to accept that I might make different choices than you would make. We sat in silence for a moment. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally. You fix it by learning from it, by remembering that being someone's child doesn't give you the right to control their life, by understanding that love means respecting people enough to let them make their own mistakes. And us? Our relationship? That depends on you, David. On whether you can learn to see me as your mother instead of your responsibility. Emily was the last to visit, and she came with an agenda. Mother, I want to talk about your finances. I'm sure you do. With this property you own, you could make some very smart investments. I could help you. Emily. There are tax advantages you could take, estate planning strategies. Emily. I'm just saying with proper management. Emily, I said more sharply. Stop. She looked startled. I don't want your financial advice. I don't want your management. I don't want your help unless I ask for it. But you could be making so much more money. And what would I do with more money, Emily? I'm 70 years old. I have enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I don't need more. But you could leave more to us. There it was, the truth she'd been dancing around. Emily, let me be very clear about something. After what you and your siblings did to me, you should be grateful you're getting anything at all. Her face flushed. That's not fair. We were trying to help. You were trying to help yourselves, and now you're doing it again. I'm trying to help you maximize your assets. No, you're trying to maximize your inheritance. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, then said, You're never going to forgive us, are you? Emily, forgiveness isn't something you get just by wanting it. It's something you earn. How? What do I have to do? Emily asked, her voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. I looked at my youngest daughter, brilliant, ambitious Emily, who had always seen the world as a series of problems to solve and advantages to gain. Even now, she was trying to turn forgiveness into a transaction. Emily, you don't do forgiveness. You become worthy of it. You start by learning to see me as a person, not an asset to manage. You start by asking what I want instead of telling me what I should want. But I don't understand what you want from me. I want you to visit me because you enjoy my company, not because you're worried about your inheritance. I want you to call me because you miss talking to me, not because you have advice to give me. I want you to love me for who I am, not for what I might leave you. She sat quietly for a long moment. I don't know if I know how to do that. Then learn. You're a smart woman, Emily. Figure it out. And if I can't? I met her eyes directly. Then you'll have to live with the consequences of that choice. After she left, I sat in my small living room, looking out at the garden I was slowly planting. Tommy had helped me set up raised beds so I wouldn't have to bend so far. Sarah had brought me seedlings from her own garden. Even David had surprised me by showing up with a load of mulch. Small gestures, but they mattered. 6 months later, I was standing in front of the Riverside Community Center, looking at the banner that read, Elder Advocacy Foundation, First Annual Conference. My story had spread beyond our family, beyond our town. Other families had reached out, sharing their own stories of elderly parents, dismissed, controlled, or abandoned by adult children who claimed to know best. You ready for this, Mom? Sarah asked, straightening my jacket. As ready as I'll ever be. She'd been coming to visit every Sunday for months now, not to check on me, but to share her week, to ask my opinion about her kids, to simply spend time together. It had taken her a while to learn the difference between caring for someone and controlling them. But she was learning. David approached, with a nervous smile. The reporter from Channel 7 wants to interview you before your speech. He'd been different since the settlement, humbler, more careful about how he spoke to me. He was still paying back the money he'd spent, 10% of his salary every month. It would take him years, and we both knew it, but he was doing it, and that mattered. How do I look? I asked him. Like someone who has something important to say. Tommy appeared with a cup of tea. Grandma, there are almost 200 people here. You're kind of famous now. I'm not famous, sweetheart. I'm just someone who got tired of being invisible. The local news had picked up my story first, then regional papers, then a national magazine. I'd been surprised by how many people it resonated with. Not just elderly people, but anyone who'd ever felt dismissed or controlled by family members who claimed to know what was best for them. As I walked toward the podium, I saw Emily slip into the back of the room. She'd been the most reluctant to join this journey, still struggling with the idea that I might know my own mind better than she knew it for me. But she was here, and that was something. "Good morning," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "My name is Margaret Evans, and 6 months ago, my children put me in a nursing home against my will." The room was quiet, attentive. They thought they were helping me. They thought they knew what was best for me. They thought that loving me meant making my decisions for me. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Some young, some old, all listening intently. They were wrong. I told them about the betrayal, about the legal fight, about the settlement that had given me back not just my money, but my dignity. But I also told them about the harder work that came after, the work of rebuilding trust, of teaching my children to see me as a person again, of learning to forgive without forgetting. The money mattered, I said as I concluded. But what mattered more was being heard. What mattered more was being seen. What mattered more was proving that age doesn't equal incompetence, and that love without respect is just pretty words. The applause was warm and sustained. As I left the podium, I was surrounded by people with their own stories. Daughters who'd been shut out of decisions about their mother's care. Sons who'd been dismissed as too emotional to handle their father's finances. Elderly people who'd been labeled difficult for insisting on their own autonomy. I listened to each story, offered what advice I could, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of being useful, not because I was serving others, but because I was standing up for something that mattered. Mom. Emily's voice was quiet beside me as the crowd began to thin. "Can I talk to you?" We found a quiet corner of the community center. She looked nervous, younger somehow than her 42 years. "I've been thinking about what you said, about learning to see you as a person instead of an asset. And I realized I don't actually know you very well. Not as a person. I know you as my mother, as someone who took care of me and worried about me and supported me. But I don't know what you like to do for fun or what you think about. Politics, or what your dreams were when you were my age." I smiled. "Those are good questions, Emily. Could I take you to lunch sometime? Not to give you advice or check on you, but just to get to know you?" "I'd like that very much." As we walked toward the parking lot, I saw my family scattered around. Tommy helping fold chairs, Sarah chatting with other attendees, David speaking seriously with a lawyer who was interested in elder advocacy. Emily walked beside me asking tentative questions about my life before marriage, before children, before I became someone who existed primarily to serve others. For the first time in years, I felt complete, not because my family had returned to me, but because I had returned to myself. I was Margaret Evans, not just a mother, not just a grandmother, not just someone to be managed or controlled or dismissed. I was a woman with opinions and preferences, and the right to make my own choices. I was a person worthy of respect, not because of what I could do for others, but because of who I was. The nursing home had tried to make me invisible. My own children had tried to erase my voice. But I had found it again, stronger than before, and I wasn't going to let anyone silence it again. As Tommy drove me home, I looked out at the familiar streets of my neighborhood. The same streets I'd walked as a young mother, the same community where I'd raised my children and buried my husband and built a life that mattered. "Grandma," Tommy said quietly, "I'm proud of you." "Thank you, sweetheart." Not just for fighting back, but for teaching us all something important. What's that? That love isn't about making someone safe. It's about letting them be themselves. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You're a wise young man, Tommy Evans. I learned from the best. That night, alone in my small apartment with my cup of tea and my garden visible through the window, I opened my journal and wrote, "Today I spoke to 200 people about dignity and respect and the right to make our own choices. 6 months ago, I was a forgotten woman in a nursing home, invisible and voiceless. Today I am Margaret Evans again, complete, complicated, and entirely myself. The journey isn't over. Emily still struggles to see me as more than her mother. David still tries to manage situations he thinks I can't handle. Sarah still worries about me living alone. But they're learning, and more importantly, I've learned that I don't need their permission to be myself. I don't need their approval to make my own choices. I am enough, exactly as I am. Tomorrow I'm having lunch with Emily. Next week, Sarah and I are going to the botanical garden. David has asked if he can help me with the foundation's legal work. Not to take over, but to support what I'm building. It's not the family I had before, but it's better than the family I had become. It's honest. It's respectful. It's real. And I am no longer invisible. I closed the journal and smiled. Outside, the garden I'd planted was growing. Slowly, steadily, beautifully. Like forgiveness. Like trust. Like the new life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. I was 70 years old and I was just getting started. 1 year later, the Elder Advocacy Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We had chapters in 12 states, a legal aid program, and a network of volunteers who visited nursing, homes to ensure residents had someone advocating for their rights. My children had all found their way to different kinds of relationships with me. Sarah and I had become genuine friends, sharing books and gardening tips and long conversations about life. David had become my unofficial legal counsel for the Foundation, using his skills to help other families navigate the complex world of elder care. Emily was still learning, but she was trying, and that was enough for now. Tommy had moved closer to help with the Foundation's day-to-day operations, but also because he genuinely enjoyed my company. He'd brought a girlfriend to meet me last month. A smart, kind young woman who treated me like a person, not just someone's grandmother. I still lived in my I still made my own decisions about my money, my health, my life. I still had bad days and good days, moments of forgetfulness and flashes of perfect clarity. But I was never again invisible. And that, I had learned, was worth fighting for.